faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of Governor
the duties of the office of Governor
of the State of Arkansas,
upon
which I am now about to enter. So help me God.
So help me God.
Back with former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. He is running for President of the United States. I'm going to do a rapid fire with you here in a second, but let me just, I want to cover 3 things in the next 10 minutes. First one is, why the heck are we still on foreign oil?
Because I think we are tied to the house of sod, and it's high time that we take ourselves and untie that rope behind our back, which is an oil-soaked rope. I don't know what it is. I think it's, look, the next president ought to say we're going to be energy independent, self-sustaining, by the end of my second term.
You know what? We've heard it before. We keep hearing it. 20 years, we're going to be. I mean,
no, 20 years is too long, Glenn.
Since Jimmy Carter, they've been saying
Actually,
this
go
crap.
all the way back to Richard Nixon in 1973. Project Independence started. Jimmy Carter renewed it. Ronald Reagan renewed it. Nobody's done it. Look, it's time that we finally decide that this is not just an energy issue. It's a national security issue. We need to say to the Saudis, we're going to care about as much about your oil as we do about your sand. And within 10 years, you know, you can do whatever you want to do with your oil, but we're not going to need it anymore because we're going to find alternative sources of energy that we can sustain. If a country can't feed itself, if it can't fuel itself, and if it can't fight for itself by manufacturing its own weapons of self-defense, it's not free. It's outsourced its freedom to whoever provides those 3 things.
Do you think we are free anymore?
Not
I think
really.
we're so.
No,
I think we're so tied to all these other countries and companies.
And look what we're doing. The Lost Treaty, the Law of the Sea Treaty. We're about to ratify. That's the dumbest thing we've ever done. It's like taking our sovereignty and handing it over to some international tribunal. What's
Explain the Lost Theory, or the Lost Treaty.
The Law of the Sea Treaty essentially would say that the United States would give up certain controls of its territorial waters. It would give up its sovereign understanding of what it can do within its own seas, both at the surface and within the depths, and that we would virtually hand ourselves over to an international body of justice. Look, this country established itself under one authority, the Constitution of the United States, not some international treaty, not international law. It ought to be scary enough you have federal judges at the appellate level who are using international cases as a precedent for their decisions. This is the kind of continuation of what is not a matter of saying, hey, we live in a great big world, we're in a global economy. We're way beyond that when we start saying we're going to subject ourselves to international law.
We're already there with the MCCAIN case in the Supreme Court. They heard that last.
That's exactly right. And that's an outrage, and I cannot understand. The same thing true. I hear people talk about just, in essence, removing all the borders. You know, we have NAFTA and we have CAFTA. What I've said is we need HAFTA. HAFTA means everybody else have to live by the same rules we live by, and we're not enforcing that. Not with the Chinese, not with nations to the north and the south of us. If we don't do it, we are outsourcing our freedom.
Okay, so let me just cover. Let me back up here. Let's go back and talk about the MCCAIN case here just a little bit, because that one is riddled with all kinds of booby traps and landmines. One, that is, if the Supreme Court rules in favor of MCCAIN, that means an international tribunal, The Hague, is above the Constitution, right or wrong?
Absolutely right. In fact, we ought to impeach the judges who vote that way because they have violated their oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. There is no obligation for a United States court to say, let's see what they think over there at The Hague. Heck with that. We have law. You come to this country, you break our law, you suffer the penalty of our law, not your law. If you want to break your law, go home and do it. But in our country, break our law, and
this is why quite honestly, this is why I think this in the border, because I believe there's corruption. I believe there's corruption and money and something. I can't put my finger on it, but I will tell you that SPP, you're familiar with the SPP, I think that thing is... we have handed our sovereignty over to these global corporations, and Canada and Mexico and President Bush are all in on saying we need to have a big, giant European Union kind of style government, and we've handed it away. And that's why people keep asking me about the Second Amendment. And I want my gun.
And the Second Amendment is not about hunting. I get so frustrated when some candidates ask about the Second Amendment. They start telling me, well, I have a hunting license and I'm a member of the NRA. Look, so do I. It's not about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is about freedom. It's about protecting ourselves, our families, our property, and ultimately, if necessary, I know this sounds pretty bold, but from our own government when they get out of control. That's what it was about.
So you tell me what they should have done after Katrina in New Orleans when they went door to door to take the gun. You know, Newt Gingrich just said...
The Department of Justice should have, instead of supporting that, should have said, my gosh, you can't do that.
They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that, Governor. You know that, and I know that.
I wouldn't appoint an Attorney General as President who didn't understand what the Second Amendment did, and it gives the rights to individuals, not to geographical locations, not to police entities. It gives that as a fundamental right, just in the same way, if we value the First Amendment, then we have to value the Second. And I don't understand why more people, particularly in the media, who embrace, love, and herald the First Amendment, don't realize that once you start chipping away at any of them, you chip away at all of them.
So let me go back.
Okay.
You are a citizen, and Newt Gingrich just gave a speech where he said, I don't think people are paying attention to their liberties. He said all it's going to take is one city to be destroyed, and they'll come and take all your liberties, and we will hand it to the federal government. So you tell me, the federal government says, we've got to get all these handguns, we've got to get all these guns off the street, and they come knocking at your door, and they say, Governor, I'm sorry, I'm here for any gun that you might have. What do you say?
Being the first governor in America with a concealed carry permit, they need to understand something. They're not going to do that, because that is a ultimate violation of my basic constitutional right to protect myself. And unless I'm a criminal, they have no right to confiscate anything from me, especially they're not confiscating my firearm. Here's what we got to understand. They're confiscating my constitutional rights. And once they take that one away, then they can take away every other right. The right of a fair trial, the right of speech, the right of assembly, the right of worship. It doesn't stop. And I'm not trying to be some, radical guy. I'm just trying to say that this is a dangerous precedent, and those people who defend the destruction of the Second Amendment need to think through where they're headed with that.
Tell me what's going on the border. Why are we not building this? What's going on? What have we sold out? Why is Ramos and Campion still in jail?
I have no idea. It's embarrassing that these people were put in prison for doing their jobs. And what they should have been given is a medal, not a prison sentence. It's an outrage. We ought to be building a secure border. I want to be very clear. I don't begrudge that people want to come to this country. Glenn, I've said many times, I want to say it again, I thank God every day that I live in a country people are trying to break into, not one they're trying to break out of. But we ought not to make it so easy that it's harder for me to get on an airplane in Little Rock, Arkansas, and go somewhere in the next state than it is for somebody to jump an international border. I'm not mad at the immigrants. I am angry at our government for completely being derelict in fixing this problem by having a secure border, making me go through taking my toothpaste out and put it in a plastic bag so I can get on a plane, but somebody can jump the border and they don't even so much as have a piece of paper with them to tell me who they are, where they've been, and if they have a criminal background.
So how do you fix it? Because you have the DREAM Act going through. You have members of Congress openly. I mean, I tell you, I think America needs to reread the Declaration of Independence, because I feel exactly the way our founding fathers did. We keep begging you to solve these problems, and you cause repeated injury. You injure us again. Well, you've got the DREAM Act going there. You have the AFL-CIO now suing in court to make sure that Chertoff can't go get the companies. How do you solve it?
Well, you have to start with a border, because if you don't do that, nothing matters. You can everything else is nonsense and talk until you have a secure border and say it stops here. The second thing you do is you have to go after the companies. You're not going to get illegals who don't even speak the language to just lift their hand and say, by the way, I'm here illegally. What you do is you say, if you employ people, you have to know who they are, and they have to have verification of their citizenship or their legal status. And if you don't have that, then it's you that's going to pay the fine. You know, if you deal with the demand, the supply will take care of itself. And that's what we have not done in this country.
I have 60 seconds. You tell me what America looks like in 6 years from now. Same distance we are from 9/11. 6 years from now, we keep going down this path and we don't change anything. What's America look like?
If we keep going down this path, I think you're going to see, particularly if Democrats get control, higher taxes, government-owned health care. You're going to see less secure borders. We're going to have continually a complete sort of destruction of our American culture in terms of language. You're also going to see our education system continually move away from what it needs to, which is stricter standards, and go to more mush. I believe also we're going to have a less of a firm stick when it comes to dealing with the radical Islamo-fascists, which is an enemy that will kill us if we don't stand firm against them. And we're going to have individual rights trampled upon.
Okay, we'll be back in just a second, and it's rapid fire for the